Welcome to Chapter 8 of Child Psychology. In this chapter, we are actually, with this chapter, starting a new unit looking at children in what I'll call the play years, preschool years. I don't do lots of words we can use to call it to describe that. I call it the play years because essentially the context in which children are going to develop the most is when they're playing with each other, when they're playing outside, inside, all that. So much of play is what is going to contribute to physical and cognitive development and socio-emotional development. We are pulling out of the last unit, which is the first 2 years of life. We're going to see in those first 2 years of life all of this dramatic change as far as our bodies, just going from newborn infants to, like, on the average, I think like 7 pounds and maybe 20 inches to 2 years old, where children are probably 30 pounds and maybe 3 feet tall. So there's a lot of change there. Now we're getting into the years, you're going to see the growth will taper off a little bit. It's not as dramatic. But consequently, we are going to see that the kinds of changes are going to be recognizable. You want children to learn to go from walking to running and to climbing things and to interacting with each other. You wouldn't really expect a 1-year-old to be playing with other children. You would expect a 3-year-old to have some interactions. Consequently, we're also going to see that in some areas of development, we can start to recognize where some children are maybe behind others. Where in the first 2 years, it's like, well, they'll probably catch up. So by over 2 years old, you're going to be able to start to see something that, I think I'm going to kind of keep an eye on that, because the child might be a little behind in development. And it didn't mean they wouldn't catch up, but you could probably start to compare children a little bit more than before. This is a chapter on biological development. I think so much biological development in this unit and in the next one, as we get into middle childhood, we're going to start to see that the physical development has a lot to do with cognitive, a lot more to do with cognitive and socio-emotional. Children, as they interact, are going to respond to one another differently depending on how they look and how big they are and how fast they are and how strong they are and all that kind of stuff. First of all, let me point out something as far as studying and trying to remember things that are associated with the averages. I just gave you a statistic. On the average, newborn infants are 7 pounds and 20 inches. What does that mean, really? It doesn't really mean anything, because most people's children are not the average. They're above average or below average. And being above or below average is not a big deal, and that's why pediatricians tend to talk in terms of something called percentiles rather than averages. So what if your child isn't the average? There's nothing wrong with that, but you wouldn't want your child, as far as like weight, to be in the 120 percentile, meaning your child's bigger than 120% of other children the same age. By the same context, you wouldn't want your child to be in the -5 percentile. Those are possible statistically as far as children, but it's rare, very rare. So that's the deal with percentiles. Just kind of we want children to kind of keep not in the middle, but between 5 and 95%. And after that, then we're going to watch for maybe there's something wrong. Something else you're going to see in this unit is, and in this chapters, is a good discussion on the difference between gross motor skills and fine motor skills. And I know that I've talked about this before. Gross being the collaboration of a lot of muscle groups, like walking. gross motor skills are there are a lot of gross motor skills developing in this unit 3 to 4, 5 years old. This is when we learn to walk, to climb, maybe to throw a ball. This is when children start to get involved in sports and dance and stuff like that. Now we're also going to see more fine motor skills developing, where in the first couple of years, because if I remember, I talked about children's hands being short and stubby, they're not going to have as many fine motor skills. Now in this age, you're going to see most of us learn to color and to write and to tie our shoes, maybe not, but to button buttons, definitely, and do those fine motor skills. Toward that end, we are starting to pay attention to children doing creative things like drawing. And there's a lot of controversy to this, because you take a 4-year-old, you're looking at a 4-year-old's artwork. To where is our responsibility to take a child who really loves doing something and say, okay, well, I'm going to get you a class, or I'm going to get you utensils so that you can draw more, or something like that. And then where do you just kind of let them do it? And that's a big question, because it's exciting when you see your children really interested in something. It's cool when they really love doing something and want to do it every day. And yet, it's easy, on the other hand, to take it over and to make it not so fun for the child. And you're like, ooh, you're really good at this, so I'm going to make sure that you get to the Olympics, or that you become a published author, or whatever. And your child's just like, I just want to do this. It's fun. All right. Okay. Let's shift a little bit. Something else that we're going to address in this chapters are problems. Like I said, now that children are past those first 2 years, we're going to start to see some diversity. We're going to start to see some diversity of abilities. As much as we love equality in our society, the truth is that as people, we are different. And those differences mean that some people are better at stuff than others. And there's not a lot you can do about that. Not a lot you should do about that. Because we need some people to be good at stuff and some people not to be good at stuff. Now, I know that sounds controversial, but the truth is that everybody's good at something. The real challenge is to find out what you're good at. And this is the age at which you're going to start to see that. With children, I think one of the best ways is, what do they really love doing? What do they enjoy doing? So, that's kind of their skill level, but you're also looking at things like eating. What do they like to eat? There's a lot of controversy about this, because, as parents, or as adults, you know what's good for children, but the children are not always going to eat the food that's good for them. They may even not eat the food that's good for them. So to what degree do you really shove that on the child and make the child do stuff? There are going to be some things that children have to do. And there are going to be a lot of things that we might feel like they have to do, but maybe we just need to lighten up and let them not do it, or do it on their own time, or something like that. You'll notice that I'm not going to stand up here, and I'm not standing, I'm sitting, and say, do this, because children are different, and I think the jury's out on the degree to which you have to force children to do stuff. With eating in particular, I think that sometimes comes back to bite us, and you force your child to eat something and they learn to hate it. Where if you kind of let them go with it, they might come around to it eventually. Maybe not, though. In any case, I don't know. I'm usually going to fall on the side of being encouraging to do the right thing, but not yelling and screaming about it. Okay, and one last point, as we're talking about physical development, and children are largely mobile to this point, this is going to be the age at which we're going to start to see that some children are inactive and need to be more active. So this is definitely an issue you're going to read about, you're going to consider, and we might end up discussing it a little bit as childhood obesity and inactivity and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind as an issue. Anyway, I hope you all have a great week. It's good to see you back. And this is Chapter 8. I'll see you back here for Chapter 9.